Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told Us podcast.
Yeah.
Today we're diving deep into a story.
A story that really, I think, left the world
Yeah.
just in shock and disbelief back in 2015.
For sure.
The devastating crash of Germanwings Flight 9525.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that just chills you to the bone, right?
Yeah.
You think about,
Absolutely.
a seemingly routine flight.
Yeah. Turned into a total nightmare.
Yeah, and it raises so many questions
It does.
about aviation safety and,
Yeah.
the human mind.
And how could this happen? So let's set the scene.
Okay.
March 24th, 2015. It's a typical morning at Barcelona El Prat Airport.
All right.
Germanwings Flight 9525, an Airbus A320 getting ready for takeoff,
Mm-hmm.
headed to Düsseldorf, Germany.
Okay.
And on board, we have 144 passengers and 6 crew members all settling in
Right.
for this, flight, completely oblivious to the horror that awaits.
It's just striking the normalcy of it all, right? Like
Yeah.
you have 16 German students and their teachers
Yeah.
heading home from an exchange program.
Picture their excitement, ready to share stories of their adventure.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have 2 opera singers,
Oh, wow.
a bass baritone and a contralto. Imagine,
Yeah.
their anticipation maybe humming a tune on their way to a performance.
Yeah, families, couples, individuals, all with their own, hopes and dreams
Right?
brought together on this seemingly ordinary flight.
Yeah.
So at the helm, we have Captain Patrick Sondenheimer,
Okay.
a very seasoned pilot, over 6,000 flight hours.
Wow.
And beside him, the co-pilot, 27-year-old Andreas Lubitz,
Okay.
Flight 9525, takes off, climbs to its cruising altitude, 38,000 feet. And then, about 30 minutes into the flight, something unimaginable happens.
So imagine this. You're an air traffic controller, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're monitoring the screens. Everything's looking normal.
Routine.
And then suddenly one blip, Flight 9525,
Uh-oh.
starts to descend rapidly and inexplicably.
Oh, no.
And you try to make contact.
You're trying to reach them?
Radio silence.
Silence. The tension is rising.
Oh, God,
every
yeah.
second that goes by.
It's a race against time.
It is?
They scramble a French military jet to intercept,
Okay.
but it's too late.
So while all this is happening up in the air,
Right.
down below, in a remote area of the French Alps,
Mm-hmm.
unsuspecting hikers
Just enjoying the day.
enjoying this beautiful, crisp mountain air.
Yeah.
And then they hear this roar.
This distant roar.
Getting louder and louder.
Closer.
Closer.
This deafening crash.
Debris scattered across the
Oh,
mountainside.
wow.
Germanwings, Flight 9525, reduced to wreckage. No survivors.
The world is stunned. How could this happen?
Yeah.
A modern airliner, experienced pilots,
Right.
simply vanishes from the radar and crashes into a mountain.
It's just unbelievable.
So they have to find out what happened. And thankfully, they're able to recover.
Yeah.
The black boxes,
Those are crucial.
the flight data and cockpit voice recorders, they hold the key. Yeah. To unlocking this mystery.
To unraveling this mystery, and what they reveal is a chilling truth.
It wasn't a mechanical failure.
Oh, what?
It wasn't a sudden storm. It wasn't a terrorist attack.
Oh, my God.
This was a deliberate act by the co-pilot, Andreas Lubitz. While the captain was out of the cockpit,
Oh, gosh.
Lubitz locked the door, preventing his return,
No.
and intentionally initiated the plane's descent.
He crashed the plane on purpose.
A planned crash.
And so as investigators delve deeper into Lubitz's background,
Right.
a disturbing picture emerges.
Yeah.
He had a history of mental health struggles, depression, suicidal tendencies.
Wow.
And he concealed this information, fearing it would jeopardize his career, his dreams.
Think about the pressure he must have felt, the burden of that secret.
Isn't it?
This was a young man wrestling with inner demons.
Yeah.
And tragically, his personal crisis had catastrophic consequences.
This was a pivotal moment for the aviation industry. It forced everyone to confront some uncomfortable truths about mental health, especially in such a high-pressure profession.
For sure.
So how do we balance individual privacy with public safety?
Right.
How do we ensure the well-being of those entrusted with the lives of so many?
Yeah, those are the questions that everyone was asking.
Exactly. And we'll delve deeper into those changes. But first, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more captivating deep dives on Tell Me More.
We've got some incredible stories lined up for you.
We do.
This Germanwings crash wasn't just a tragedy, it was a wake-up call.
Yeah, a huge wake-up call.
It forced the aviation industry to take a hard look in the mirror and really confront
Yeah.
this difficult truth
Yeah.
that pilot mental health had been, for far too long, a silent crisis.
Absolutely. And, Before the crash, relying on pilots to self-report mental health issues was pretty much a norm.
Right.
But as we tragically learned, that system had some fatal flaws.
Exactly. The stigma surrounding mental health,
Yeah.
particularly in a profession that demands weak performance and this unwavering confidence.
Yeah, you got to be on top of your game.
Right. It created this environment where pilots were hesitant to speak up.
Of course.
They feared jeopardizing their careers,
Understandably.
losing their medical certifications, being grounded.
Yeah.
So they suffered in silence.
And the consequences, as we saw with Germanwings, could be catastrophic.
Absolutely.
So what changed after the crash? How did the industry begin to address this critical issue?
One of the most immediate changes was the implementation of the two-person rule,
Okay.
requiring at least 2 authorized personnel in the cockpit at all times.
Got it.
This simple but effective measure meant that if one pilot needed to leave the cockpit, a flight attendant or another crew member would take their place, ensuring there was always a second set of eyes and hands on the controls.
So it was a way to mitigate the risk of a single pilot taking sole control of the aircraft.
Exactly.
A sort of checks and balances system within the cockpit.
Precisely. But it was just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Of course.
The industry also recognized the need to go beyond just reactive measures and address the root of the problem, the stigma surrounding mental health.
Okay, so how did they tackle that? It seems like such a deeply ingrained cultural issue, especially in a field like aviation.
It was, and to some extent it still is.
Yeah.
But the Germanwings crash really sparked this crucial conversation.
It did.
Airlines started to realize that they couldn't simply rely on pilots to self-report.
Yeah.
They needed to create an environment where pilots felt safe and supported in seeking help.
Okay, so you mentioned psychological screenings. How were those changed or enhanced?
So before the crash, psychological evaluations during pilot training and subsequent medical checkups, they often focused on this general mental stability, but they didn't necessarily delve into the specific stressors and challenges that pilots face.
That was pretty surface level.
It was.
Just kind of checking the box.
Right. After Germanwings, there was this push to make these evaluations more comprehensive and tailored to the unique demands of the profession.
So it was about recognizing that pilots are human beings, not just skilled professionals.
Right.
And they are susceptible to mental health struggles.
Yeah.
Just like anyone else.
Absolutely.
And those struggles can be amplified.
Oh, for sure.
By the inherent pressures of their job.
Yeah. The long hours, irregular sleep patterns, demanding schedules, constant scrutiny.
Wow.
The immense responsibility of carrying hundreds of lives.
It's a lot to bear.
It is.
It certainly puts a new perspective on the phrase mile-high stress.
I know, right?
So the psychological evaluations became more in-depth.
Yes.
What else changed?
Well, airlines also began to implement these confidential peer support programs, recognizing the power of shared experiences.
I see.
These programs allowed pilots to connect with other pilots who understood the unique challenges of their profession. They could talk openly and honestly about their struggles, share coping mechanisms, and access resources without fear of judgment or career repercussions.
That sounds incredibly valuable. It's like having a support network that truly understands what you're going through.
Exactly.
A safe space to be vulnerable.
Right. It was a crucial step in breaking down that stigma.
I can see that.
And encouraging pilots to seek help before reaching a crisis point.
Okay.
And it wasn't just about peer support.
Right.
Airlines also started partnering with mental health professionals.
Okay.
Who specialized in aviation psychology.
Wow, so they were really taking this seriously.
They were.
Okay.
They offered counseling services tailored to the specific stressors of the profession, providing pilots with the tools and resources they needed to manage their mental well-being.
So it was a multi-pronged approach.
It was.
Enhanced screenings, peer support, specialized counseling.
Yes.
It sounds like the industry was finally taking pilot mental health seriously.
They were making strides.
Yeah, but what about the public? Was there a shift in perception about the importance of mental health in general?
Absolutely. The Germanwings crash had this ripple effect.
Wow.
That extended far beyond the aviation industry.
Okay.
It sparked this global conversation about mental health.
Wow.
Forcing people to confront their own biases and assumptions.
It's like the crash shattered this long-held taboo.
It did.
Making it okay to talk about mental health openly and honestly.
Exactly, and that's a positive outcome.
Yeah.
Despite the immense tragedy that brought it about.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there can be glimmers of hope.
For sure.
lessons learned and opportunities for growth.
Absolutely.
But this story isn't just about industry changes
Right.
and shifting societal perceptions.
It's about the individuals.
It is.
At the heart of this tragedy.
Yeah.
The victims, their families, the communities left devastated by this loss.
Okay.
Let's shift our focus to their experiences, their journeys of grief, and the long road to healing.
Yeah. It's important to remember that behind the headlines, the statistics, the technical details, there are real people.
There are.
Whose lives were forever altered.
Yeah.
On that fateful day.
People who boarded a plane full of anticipation, excitement.
Right.
Maybe even a bit of trepidation about the journey ahead.
Of course.
Never imagining that it would be their last.
We've talked about, the systemic changes that followed this crash.
Right.
But, we need to take a moment to reflect on the human cost.
Absolutely.
Of this tragedy. 144 passengers, 6 crew members, their families, their friends.
Yeah.
All irrevocably affected by this event.
The immediate aftermath, it was just a whirlwind of grief and confusion and anger.
I can only imagine.
Imagine being one of the families waiting at the airport in Düsseldorf.
Yeah.
Eagerly anticipating the arrival of your loved one.
Right.
Only to be met with the devastating news that the plane had crashed.
It's hard to even fathom the pain and anguish.
I know.
They must have endured.
The suddenness, the brutality of the crash. Yeah.
And then the realization that it wasn't an accident.
Right.
But a deliberate act.
Yeah.
It's almost too much to bear.
And as the investigation unfolded, revealing the details of Lubitz's mental health struggles and his decision to crash the plane, the families were left grappling with this complex mix of emotions.
Grief, anger, confusion.
I bet.
And perhaps even a sense of betrayal.
Betrayal by the co-pilot, who was entrusted with the lives of their loved ones.
Exactly.
And betrayal by a system that failed to prevent this tragedy.
Yeah.
And many of the families sought answers.
Of course.
Demanding accountability from Germanwings.
Right.
From the aviation authorities, from anyone who could have potentially prevented this.
They wanted someone to be held responsible.
Yeah. They filed lawsuits seeking not just financial compensation, but justice for their loved ones.
It's a natural human response.
It is.
Wanting to make sense of the senseless?
Yeah.
To find someone or something to blame?
Did any of those lawsuits bring the families closure? Closure is a tricky concept in a situation like this.
For sure.
No legal ruling can truly erase the pain or bring back the lives lost.
Right.
Some families did receive financial settlements.
Okay.
But for many, the emotional scars run deep and the healing process is ongoing.
2 years after the crash, Lubitz's family held a press conference.
Yeah.
Breaking their silence for the first time.
Right.
Can you tell us about that? What was their message?
It was a highly anticipated and emotionally charged event.
I bet.
Lubitz's parents had remained largely silent throughout the investigation and the subsequent media frenzy.
Right.
At the press conference, they expressed their profound sorrow for the victims and their families, acknowledging the immense pain that their son had caused.
Did they offer any explanation for his actions?
They maintained that their son had been suffering from severe depression.
Okay.
But they had not been aware of the extent of his struggles or his plans to crash the plane.
Wow.
They challenged the official narrative, suggesting that there were still unanswered questions about what happened in the cockpit that day.
And their press conference was met with mixed reactions.
It was.
Some people felt empathy for their loss, while others were angered by what they perceived as an attempt to deflect blame from their son.
It was a complex and sensitive situation.
Yeah.
The Lubitz family was also grappling with grief.
Of course.
And trying to reconcile their love for their son with the horrific act he committed.
The crash of Germanwings Flight 9525 was a tragedy on so many levels.
It really was.
It exposed vulnerabilities in aviation safety protocols.
For sure.
It sparked a global conversation about mental health.
Yeah.
And it left a trail of shattered lives in its wake.
It did.
As we conclude our deep dive into this event, I think it's important to remember the individuals.
Absolutely.
The human stories behind the headlines.
Yeah.
The passengers and crew who boarded that flight with dreams and aspirations.
Right.
The families whose lives were forever altered.
And the communities left to grapple with the aftermath of this senseless act.
Exactly. Their stories remind us of the fragility of life.
They do.
The importance of mental well-being. And the need for compassion and understanding.
For sure.
In the face of tragedy.
Absolutely.
While the wounds may never fully heal, we can honor the memory of those lost.
We can.
By learning from this event and working to prevent such tragedies from happening again.
Yeah, we can advocate for greater awareness of mental health issues.
Absolutely.
Support those who are struggling and challenge the stigma that prevents people from seeking help.
And we can remember that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, resilience.
And the power of human connection.
Yes, the power of human connection to guide us through.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we hope this deep dive has left you with a renewed appreciation for the importance of empathy, understanding, and the pursuit of a safer and more compassionate world.